The shadow before the light, when God hides you to forge you. Have you ever wondered why the ones who seem the most broken, the most rejected, the most misunderstood, are often the ones who rise with the most power, the most wisdom, the most light? Why the people with the darkest pasts often carry the brightest futures? Why would a loving God allow someone to walk through hell, only to ask them to speak of heaven? You see, we have been taught to associate divine favor with ease, peace, and visible blessings. But I want to challenge that idea right now. What if favor looks like fire? What if being chosen actually means being crushed first? What if your deepest wounds are not evidence of God's absence, but His presence in disguise? When God wants to use someone for a mission that will shake the earth, He does not start with their strengths. He starts with their suffering. He begins in the dark. That's where He forms the unshakable. That's where He hides His warriors. Because the brightest mission requires the most refined soul, and refinement only happens in the fire. Think about it. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Gold is purified by fire. And spirits, they are awakened in the wilderness. I know what you're thinking, but why me? Why was I born into this pain, this rejection, this loneliness? And to that I say, because God saw in you something the world didn't. He saw a depth that could carry a message no one else could bear. He saw a soul that could endure the weight of wisdom. Sometimes what looks like punishment is actually preparation. We often pray for elevation, but we resist isolation. Yet God's pattern is to pull His chosen ones into obscurity before He launches them into destiny. Look at Moses' 40 years in the desert. Look at David anointed as king, then back to tending sheep. Look at Jesus' 30 years in silence before 3 years of ministry. Why? Because hidden seasons are holy seasons. God hides what He's healing. He conceals what He's constructing. I want you to ask yourself something deeply personal. What if the very things you thought disqualified you were the very things that qualified you for your assignment? What if every betrayal was a divine redirection? What if every heartbreak was a spiritual initiation? What if every tear was watering seeds of divine power you didn't even know were in you? You see, the darkest nights produce the clearest stars. And when you've been through the valley, you speak with a strength that can't be faked. People can smell authenticity. They can sense when you've walked through the fire and didn't come out smelling like smoke. That's the kind of voice the world listens to. Let me share this with you. I've met people who were addicted, abandoned, abused, and forgotten. And yet, something in them refused to break. That wasn't willpower. That was divine selection. God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And how does He do it? Through pain, through pruning, through stretching, through silence. If you're in a season where nothing makes sense, where your prayers feel like they're hitting the ceiling, where your heart is breaking and no one sees it, you're not lost. You're in training. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. God is not far away. He's closer than ever, chiseling away everything that cannot go with you into your calling. Sometimes God will allow you to be emptied so He can fill you. Sometimes He will strip you of everything you leaned on so you finally lean on Him. And sometimes He will let you taste the bitterness of betrayal so that when you speak on love, you speak from truth, not theory. Have you ever wondered why your path has been so hard while others seem to glide through life? That's because your mission is not average. Your calling is not casual. You were not created for comfort, you were created for conquest. And glory always follows the groaning. That's spiritual law. Now I need you to reflect deeply. What if your darkness was never meant to destroy you, but to distinguish you? The enemy doesn't attack what isn't a threat. So if your life has been marked by unusual pain, it's because you carry unusual purpose. There is a certain kind of soul that God selects for missions that will impact generations. And those souls are often first broken so that they might become whole, truly whole. People may see your past and judge you, but God sees your capacity. People may hear your story and pity you, but God hears your silence and trusts you. Because when you've walked through darkness and still choose light, you become a lighthouse for others who are still lost at sea. You become a living sermon, a walking miracle, a testimony in motion. But let me warn you, the path of the chosen is not glamorous. It's lonely. It's heavy. It's full of nights where you question everything. But it's also the most sacred path you'll ever walk. Because while others chase platforms, you'll be chasing presence. While others seek popularity, you'll be seeking purpose. And in that place, you will hear God so clearly it will terrify and heal you at the same time. We must stop measuring favor by comfort. Sometimes the most favored are the most afflicted. Because God knows only the deeply broken can carry deeply healing messages. So if you're watching this and you've been through hell, I want you to know this: you are not forgotten. You are not cursed. You are not behind. You are in the womb of transformation. God is forming something eternal within you, and when He's done, your mere presence will shift atmospheres. Your words will break chains. Your story will awaken sleeping spirits. But until then, embrace the shadows. Trust the silence. Endure the breaking. Because the mission ahead of you is not small. It is world-shaking. And you've been selected not in spite of your darkness, but because of it. Now, I need you to sit with this question. What if your greatest pain is the womb of your greatest power? Let that question haunt you in the holiest way. But until then, embrace the shadows. Trust the silence. Endure the breaking. Because the mission ahead of you is not small. It is world-shaking. And you've been selected not in spite of your darkness, but because of it. Now, I need you to sit with this question. What if your greatest pain is the womb of your greatest power? Let that question haunt you in the holiest way. The divine blueprint, why your scars are sacred scrolls of purpose. Let's go deeper now. Because once you've survived your darkness, once you've tasted the fire, and you're still standing, there's a truth you must understand. Your scars are not shame. They are scripture. Each scar on your soul is a sacred scroll, written by divine hands, not to punish, but to prepare. Not to expose, but to empower. We often try to hide our scars, thinking they disqualify us. But God says, those are exactly what I need to show my power through you. Why? Because a scar means the wound has healed. It's no longer bleeding. It's been sealed by time, persistence, and grace. And now, it tells a story that someone else desperately needs to hear. God doesn't use perfect people, He uses healed people. Not those who've never fallen, but those who've fallen and gotten up again and again and again. Ask yourself, what stories are your scars trying to tell the world? You see, the deeper the wound, the greater the wisdom. Those who've walked through betrayal understand loyalty on a deeper level. Those who've tasted abandonment understand presence with sacred clarity. Those who've faced death, emotional, spiritual, or physical, understand life in a way that textbooks never could teach. That's the divine blueprint. God doesn't waste pain. He repurposes it. He recycles suffering into sacredness. He takes what the enemy meant for destruction and turns it into a divine weapon. You become dangerous to darkness when you realize your past doesn't disqualify you, it equips you. Listen, before you were born, you were designed with an assignment. You weren't created to fit in. You were created to stand out. But the only way to fulfill that assignment is to become intimately acquainted with the very pain your mission is called to heal in others. That's why your story had to be so specific. That's why your heartbreak felt so personal. That's why the betrayal hit so deeply. Because you weren't just being hurt, you were being honed. God was carving you into a key that could unlock someone else's prison. Imagine this. You're walking through a dark forest. You trip, fall, bleed, cry, scream. And then somehow you crawl your way out. You emerge on the other side bruised, but alive. And as you turn around, you realize there are hundreds behind you, trapped in the same darkness. And now you are the guide, not because you're perfect, but because you know the way out. That's what it means to be chosen in the dark. You become the map. You become the light. You become the living proof that survival is possible, that healing is real. That redemption is not just a poetic idea, it's a living force that breathes fire into broken hearts and resurrects what was once thought dead. But here's the catch. It's not automatic. Many are called, but few respond. The dark will either destroy you or develop you. That choice is yours. Because being chosen isn't about being special, it's about saying yes when everything in you is screaming no. Have you said yes yet? Have you looked at your pain and said, "Use me, God"? Not after I'm healed. Not after I'm perfect. Use me now, while I'm still trembling. Use me while I'm still unsure. Use me while the ink of my tears is still wet on the story you're writing. That kind of surrender is what heaven waits for. That kind of raw, trembling faith is what God builds kingdoms on. Not the strong, not the flawless, but the willing. Let me tell you something that might shake you. The very thing you're ashamed of might be your ministry. The very moment you wanted to die might become the moment that gives someone else a reason to live. The experience you wish you could erase might be the exact key that unlocks someone else's freedom. So instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "Who is this meant to heal through me?" That question right there, it flips the script. It turns trauma into testimony. It turns pain into purpose. It turns you from a victim into a vessel. And when you become a vessel, you no longer carry your past, you pour from it. People don't need polished voices. They need pierced ones. They need voices that tremble with truth. Voices that have been through hell and still sing. Voices that don't just preach light, but remember darkness and honor it, because it made them who they are. This is why God selects the darkest chosen ones. Because only those who face the abyss can speak with the authority that changes lives. Only those who've wrestled with demons can guide others to angels. Only those who've been shattered can show others how to shine through the cracks. Remember this: you are not broken. You are breaking open. There is a difference. Brokenness is the end. Breaking open is the beginning. It's the cracking of the shell so the soul can finally breathe. It's the shedding of false identities so your authentic self can rise. And yes, it hurts, but it's beautiful, because now you're no longer hiding. You're no longer pretending. You're no longer trying to be who others expect. Now you're becoming who God designed. And that version of you, that raw, real, radiant version, that's the one who will change the world. But not with noise, with presence, with stillness, with a peace that confuses people, with a fire that doesn't burn others but lights them up. That's what happens when you've walked through the dark and didn't let it devour you. You come back glowing. So I ask you again, what if your entire life has been a masterclass in becoming the healer you were born to be? What if all the chaos was choreography? What if the delay was divine? What if your detours were actually destiny in disguise? The world doesn't need more influencers. It needs more initiated ones. Those who've been through the fire and didn't come out angry but holy. Those who've lost everything and still chose faith. Those are the ones God selects for His brightest missions. And if you're still here, if you're still breathing after all you faced, then you are one of them. You are one of the chosen. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. And soon, the world will see what God has been doing in the dark. The radiance of the redeemed, how to walk in divine power after the darkness. When God brings a soul through the darkest valleys, through the wilderness of pain, betrayal, addiction, or depression, He doesn't do it just to rescue them, He does it to rebirth them. And rebirth always brings with it a new identity, a new authority, and a new responsibility. You don't just survive the darkness to go back to normal. You survive so you can shine with a light that is not of this world. After the breaking comes the blessing, but it's not the kind of reward people expect. The blessing is the becoming. You become someone who is no longer afraid of the fire. You become someone who carries heaven in your voice, peace in your eyes, and purpose in your footsteps. The radiance of the redeemed is not loud, it's luminous. It doesn't scream, it shifts the atmosphere. But here's something most people don't understand. Walking in divine power after the darkness means walking with humility. The darkest chosen ones are never arrogant. Why? Because they remember the pit. They remember the nights they almost gave up. They remember the silence of God, the ache in their chest, the loneliness. And it's that memory that keeps them grounded, tender, and surrendered. Divine power isn't about control or dominance. It's about being trusted with sacred influence. And God only trusts those who have been tested, those who have bled, cried, surrendered, and still chose to keep their heart open. If you want to carry divine power, you must first learn how to carry divine compassion. You must become a safe space for others to heal, not through your perfection, but through your presence. When you've walked through darkness and come out radiant, your life becomes a mirror for others. Not a mirror that reflects their flaws, but one that reflects their potential. You start to see people not as they are, but as they are being called to become. That's the mark of the redeemed. They don't judge, they see. They see through pain, through addiction, through anger, and they call forth the gold. They speak to the destiny within others, even when those people can't see it themselves. That's what it means to walk in divine power. It's not about being the loudest or the most followed. It's about being the most awake, the most available, the most attuned to the whispers of spirit. Because when God calls you out of darkness, He doesn't just give you a voice, He gives you vision. Divine vision is the ability to see the eternal in the midst of the temporary. It's the gift of seeing purpose in the pain, lessons in the loss, and power in the process. You begin to realize that nothing was wasted. Not a single tear, not a single betrayal, not a single night of despair. All of it was sacred. All of it was part of the training. And now you walk with a different kind of authority, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't perform, the kind that just is. You become unshakable, not because you're invincible, but because you're anchored in the knowing that God chose you on purpose, for purpose, through pain. And now your mission begins, not in the spotlight, but in the silence. Not on the stage, but in the streets, in your home, in your conversations, in your energy. Your very being becomes the message. You don't need to preach to shake someone's soul. You just need to become the healing you wish you had. Become the light you never saw. Become the love that once felt unreachable. That's the radiance of the redeemed. It doesn't need applause. It just needs authenticity. And in a world drowning in noise, your quiet, sacred, healed presence will speak louder than any sermon ever could. So I ask you now, from the depths of your soul, are you willing to carry the light, even if it means remembering the dark? Are you willing to lead others out, knowing that your path was paved with your own blood, sweat, and surrender? Are you willing to walk in divine power, not for status, but for service? Because if you are, then you are exactly the kind of soul God selects. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because you're willing, because you've been through hell and still chose heaven. And now, the world needs your light. Not later, not someday. Now, you are the one we've been waiting for.